são eugenistas contumazes, eles são supremacistas da pior espécie. Quando o Jeffrey Epstein ainda estava vivo, porém preso, tem uma matéria no The Guardian mencionando o New York Times a respeito da super-raça que o Jeffrey Epstein queria desenvolver com o seu DNA. Segundo relatos, Epstein esperava desenvolver uma super-raça humana com o seu DNA, engravidando 20 mulheres ao mesmo tempo, segundo reportagem do New York Times. O financista, milionário acusado de tráfico sexual, planejava desenvolver uma super-raça humana aprimorada usando engenharia genética e inteligência artificial. Em seu rancho no Novo México, embora haja poucas evidências de que o esquema tenha saído do papel, cientistas proeminentes, incluindo o falecido Stephen Hawking, participavam regularmente de jantares, almoços e conferências promovidos por Epstein, segundo o Times. Os planos de Epstein em relação à sua própria prole começaram a ser discutidos no início dos anos 2000, de acordo com 3 fontes contatadas pelo Times. Aspas. Epstein contou a cientistas e empresários sobre suas ambições de usar seu rancho no Novo México como base para a inseminação artificial de mulheres com seu esperma, que dariam à luz a seus filhos. Em uma ocasião, Epstein ofereceu um almoço no programa de dinâmica evolutiva de Harvard, um programa que ele ajudou a financiar com uma doação de 6,5 milhões de dólares. Em 2011, ele doou 20 mil dólares para a Associação Transhumanista Mundial, um projeto que agora opera como Humanity Plus. Ann Gartzel, vice-presidente da Humanity Plus, cujo salário já foi pago por Epstein, disse ao Times: "Não tenho a menor vontade de falar sobre Epstein agora." Evidentemente, né? As coisas que eu estou lendo sobre ele nos jornais são bem perturbadoras e vão muito além do que eu imaginava que fossem seus delitos e perversões. Que nojo! O dinheiro dele, né? E todo mundo sabia que o Epstein era um pervertido, todo mundo sabia as coisinhas que ele praticava. Hipócritas. Eugenistas hipócritas. Os amigos de Israel. O judeu sionista Alan Dershowitz foi um influente professor de direito de Harvard, além de advogado e amigo de Jeffrey Epstein, tendo sido também acusado de pedô dentro da rede de tráfico sexual. Ele foi ainda advogado de Jonathan Pollard, ex-analista de inteligência israelense, nascido nos Estados Unidos, que foi preso por espionagem a favor de Israel.
Jonathan Pollard was caught spying.
Tanto Dershowitz quanto Epstein e Ghislaine Maxwell eram, ou ainda são, exceto o falecido, Sayanim do Mossad, ou seja, colaboradores da inteligência e da espionagem de Israel. Todos eles têm ligações com o Estado sionista. Isso é algo que poucos irão contar a respeito da rede de compromate do sionista espião Robert Maxwell, que se estendeu à rede Epstein. Dershowitz escreveu um influente tratado defendendo a tortura, amplamente lido pelo Pentágono. Esse neocon, acusado de pedofilia na rede Epstein, também escreveu um livro sionista intitulado Em Defesa de Israel, uma visão mais ampla do conflito no Oriente Médio. Além disso, foi um dos responsáveis por disseminar a ideia de que os palestinos muçulmanos eram uma ameaça terrorista aos Estados Unidos, aproveitando-se do assassinato de Robert Kennedy, cujo acusado pelo crime era de origem palestina, porém cristã. Em documentos oficiais, Dershowitz foi um dos acusados de ter mantido relações com Virginia Roberts, que no ano passado faleceu de forma misteriosa. O que não se fala sobre a rede Epstein é que se trata de uma rede judaica com conexões com Israel de chantagem sexual. Por isso, existe uma imensa lista de nomes chantageados dentro e fora dos Estados Unidos pelo Mossad, com o objetivo de manter os Estados Unidos como aliados incondicionais de Israel. A rede Compromat Epstein é uma rede cabalista talmúdica ligada ao sionismo, mas é óbvio que a mídia não vai te contar isso.
One time, but one day he pulled me aside and he said, "Maria, look up. You see all this?" And I'm like, "What?" He said, "This room, all these decorators coming and going, and all this stuffing, all this artwork, and this beautiful furniture. You see it all?" I said, "Yeah." And he said, "I got it for $1." And this is the first time I heard the name Les Wexner. He said, Wexner gave it all to me. He'll do anything for me. When I called the FBI, I'm going to tell you what I told them. I said, I know this is strange, but I said, I have a report to make on someone that I've been working for that recently kidnapped me. And they said, who are you talking about? And I said, okay, well, his name is Jeffrey Epstein. And I said, and her name is Ghislaine Maxwell. And I said, but here's what's important. It also involves the Clinton family. It involves Bill Clinton for sure. It involves Donald Trump. And I said, but the most important one, and I said that he's the head of the snake, is Les Wexner. And they said, what do you think he is? And I said, he's Jewish mafia. And they said, what do you mean? And I said, what do you mean, what do I mean? Yeah, I said, what do you mean, what do I mean? I said, he's not Italian. He's Jewish, and he's mafia. I said, I can't be any clearer with you. And they said, how do you know he's Jewish mafia? And then I went on to list everything that I've seen. It was just so creepy.
Could you
and how
tell
they
me
what
you told them about why you thought Wexner was part of the Jewish mob? Because that anything you can tell me there helps me build my case. I don't know if you read my background in Wexner in part 3 of my series or remember it, but there's definitely a lot of evidence pointing to him. Right. So there was this police report filed, and I think it was Columbus, about the murder of his tax attorney, and the police report was destroyed, but there was a copy of it that ended up resurfacing 15 years later after it was supposed to be destroyed, that linked him pretty much directly to the National Crime Syndicate, which is the Jewish and Italian mafias working together. But in the 1980s, there were these series of lawsuits and arrests made. Rudy Giuliani was actually a big part in that. It was like the pizza something, I can't remember, but they basically, the Jewish mob in New York took out the Italian mafia they'd been working with all those years and consolidated and basically just took over the whole thing. So anyway, Wexner has ties to those guys. So, but anything you can give me about what you saw that made you think, so, I mean, there's clear ties from that, right? But beyond that, anything you can tell me about what you saw, why you thought it was organized crime and not like intelligence, things like that. So anything there is helpful.
Right. So one of the things that made me think it was all the passports. I know for a fact Epstein had an Israeli passport because he showed me. Okay?
Yeah.
But Epstein, and I'll tell you about the Wexner, like why I think he's mafia, but I just want to say too why I thought it was really sketchy that they had, like, how Ghislaine had all those passports. He had a passport, a French passport, an English passport, an Israeli passport, an American passport, and there was one other. And then it made me really mad that when the FBI raided the safe, I know what was in that safe. And it's not a regular safe, it's a whole room, just so you know. So when people say a safe, they think, oh, it's the safe. It's Wexner had one too. It's a whole room you walk into. And in that safe, he had a lot of photographs of children, and I know for about pictures of my sisters are in there, because one of the people from his freaking office had told me they were in his briefcase, and he kept his briefcase in that safe. He also kept everything in there because he told me he kept it for Wexner, everything. And when I asked why they recorded everything all the time, I said, is Wexner really paranoid? And he said, yeah, that's one. Epstein said, yeah, that's one way of saying it. He keeps everything. He records it all. He said, I record everything, and I keep it for Wexner in the safe. So the first house I go to has pinhole cameras. Jeffrey's showing me. He's really proud of them. Second house I go to has pinhole cameras. He says, Wexner gave me this house for $1. Wexner gave me this for $1. Then I go to the apartment. They had pinhole cameras in the Victoria's Secret dressing room. And just to fast forward, when I was in Wexner's house, there were cameras there were pinhole cameras throughout that thing. And Jeffrey again is like, oh, look at all the pinhole cameras. And Ghislaine says, you need to be careful. We can see everything. When I would go to the restroom or take a shower or anything, Ghislaine would call me, and from the speaker, and this is in New York, sometimes in London, in different places, she would say, get out of the loo, get off the toilet. She would start screaming at me. And I was on the toilet. And I'm like, what's happening? So then later Jeffrey's like, oh yeah, everything's being fed to Abigail. They're watching everything. They literally watched my every move, Whitney. Who does that? My point is, who has cameras everywhere? Sharpshooters, Doberman, mafia. That's why I said mafia. I'm like, I don't know anyone who lives like this. There were little pinhole cameras in that first mansion that Annie met Jeffrey in, and in the second mansion that he gave Jeffrey for $1. They were in the building that his brother owned on 66th Street.
The
There were
apartment
pinhole
building?
cameras in all these buildings that Wexner, yes,
Okay.
all the buildings that Wexner had owned. Well, so here's where they were in the building that Wexner owned. They were in the Victoria's Secret stalls. Even though I had this driver's license, and Jeffrey had given me his SUV to use while I was there, but I couldn't go outside because, Whitney, there were sharpshooters, and no one discusses this. Actual freaking sharpshooters everywhere. And anyway, the weirdest part about being at Wexner's was it wasn't the basement, because they had a basement. It was like below that, and there was a sauna in that room, like a huge sauna, and then they had like a vault, and then they had a door to an underground tunnel. And the only way I knew it was an underground tunnel was because their maid told me. I said, what is this door? Because I used to keep everything down there. And she said, oh, that's the tunnel that leads to the main house. I'm like, well, that's weird. Why would they do that? And she said, oh, you don't know? And I said, no. And she said, there's a giant 10,000 square foot floor that raises up when someone goes through that tunnel. And then they can enter the room secretly in, and then no one ever sees them. The floor raises up. She said it's 10,000 square feet. I mean, here's the thing. I lived there for 3 months, and I never once saw him. I saw Abigail on her horses, go out to get her horses. I could just see her go out, but I never once saw him. And that's why I called him, like, the Wizard of Oz, because he was controlling everything, but no one ever saw the guy. Okay, so Wexner set up, just so you know, nobody talks about this, but Whitney, before that first house, the house that Wexner gave to Jeffrey for $1, it's like the mansion that he raped all the children in. Before that house, there was another one. Yes, Wexner gave him that one, and that thing was incredible. That's where Annie actually met him. I brought her over there. But that house, that mansion then was later given to Ghislaine recently. She sold it to give it to, or the townhouse, whatever, and that's how she settled with Virginia. She sold that. Oh my God, that woman. And she also had an apartment she took me to. So then she shows me all this stuff on the mantle. She takes me to the mantle. I'd never been in this apartment. It's on the Upper East Side. It was like probably 3,000 square feet. Really nice apartment. Like, I didn't have any friends that lived that well, but it wasn't like, showy like her other places. But she shows me on the mantle, and I'm like, oh, what's this? And she said, these are things my father took from the British Museum. And she's like, they're ancient relics. And I'm like, did she just say that? See, I could never repeat things to people because they think I was lying or something. And I'm like, what do you mean he took them? And she's like, he took them. He liked them. And she's like, this is an ancient Peruvian relic. And she's showing me this stuff that was 22 karat gold that had been taken from graves, but out of the British Museum. I'm like, this is not good. And then she showed me all the royals. Like, she had about like 12 photo albums of growing up with the royals. Everyone thinks that they met at Oxford. No, they did not.
Yeah, I'm lying about that. Yeah.
She showed me pictures.
Yeah. Well, I talked about, I did an article where I brought up some scrubbed news reports talking about Ghislaine and Andrew way before they said they officially met. And I also heard from someone that Epstein was in London a lot in the 80s and that he had met Prince Andrew at some point during his time in London in the 80s. And he was apparently dating Ghislaine in the 80s, even though they claim they met in the early 90s and all this stuff. So I know they're all lying. So trying to figure out how much they knew. I mean, any of that information is really helpful. So.
Right. And she grew up with the royals. Like, she showed me all the photo albums. Well, she also knew Fergie, like, a long, long time ago, because I saw pictures of her super young with Fergie before she was ever married to Prince Andrew. And, I mean, it was weird. It's like somehow she knew a lot of these people. Now, she knew Prince Andrew when they were definitely, like, I mean, she looked to be maybe 20 in some of these pictures, or maybe younger than that even, with Prince Andrew. And so I can date some of it by telling you that some of the photographs where they're all super young, they were making fun. I'm not kidding you. The pictures of Diana when she was just dating the prince, and Diana's in the corner crying in some of these pictures, and Ghislaine's like, "Look there, we made her cry." Isn't that funny? We hated Diana. That's what she said. And I was like, "Oh my God, that's horrible."
I just don't think I have as many supporters in that environment than I did.
You mean within the royal household?
Mm-hmm. They see me as a threat of some kind.
Ghislaine answers to Wexner. I know that for a fact.
So you think she answers more to
that's how I knew he
to
was the head of
Wexner
this
than
thing.
like, I don't know, like Israeli intelligence where her dad worked, right? Do you think she's more like under Wexner than
Right? No, I know she's Israeli. Yeah, well, Wexner is Israeli intelligence, 100%. And I believe that. I mean, there's no way it was just a sign. It was a sign that she would be under him, and I know that's where she got all of her funding to do this scam with Epstein. I know that. Well, the thing that's so gross is that the FBI is complicit. You're the only one who cares about how it all began. That's what's so important.
That's where it is.
The
I mean,
source,
that's where the real
Israel.
story is. I mean, that's how you find out how
Yes.
extensive it is.
That's the story.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and it's all out of Israel. I'm going to tell you what Ghislaine told me about her dad. Because, I knew her right after he died. Like, I think he'd only died, 2 years before.
He died in 91.
She was constantly grieving for him, right? She was constantly still in grief. And Epstein, okay, so she would tell the story that her dad had Epstein protecting her. And I'm like, wait, what? This is weird. So she would say that Epstein was kind of assigned to her to take care of her because her dad, right before her dad passed away.
Take me back to this 1980s, because Ari Ben-Menashe says that's when Ghislaine was smitten by Jeffrey Epstein, and Robert Maxwell brings her in, and then him in, Jeffrey Epstein in, to introduce him to Ari Ben-Menashe and says, "We want this guy to work for us doing Iran-Contra." Can you confirm any of those details?
I can help you understand the timeline and who participated with Jeffrey Epstein and how he became a spy and what he did when he became a spy. I can help you in all those areas because I was there.
You were there?
I did.
Did he tell you? Did he tell you I'm a spy? Did he go and say I'm working for the Israelis?
He told me that he was a spy. He was fully aware that I was asked to join to be a spy and that I rejected the request.
So Douglas Leese asked you to join them and be a spy, and you said, "No, I don't want to have anything to do with that."
I rejected the request of the spying.
Okay.
Jeffrey Epstein accepted the request of the spying, and he further cemented his opportunity in espionage when he met Ghislaine Maxwell and entered into a serious relationship with her as a lady-man relationship that was a very strong bond between them, a very powerful and dynamic work relationship between the two of them, and they've admitted to the public that they took over Robert Maxwell's spying records, operations, and moved that to Florida to Jeffrey Epstein's house. That's been admitted. That's a fact.
He and Epstein were involved in laundering about 1.5 billion, I think it is. And Hoffenberg ended up in upstate New York in a federal prison. And he was there at the time that Epstein was in Florida being charged. So Ghislaine Maxwell had she was the glue. She was
Although
the
Epstein
fixer.
was with Les Wexner at the time, right?
Yes, he was. He was with people called the mega group. I mean, these group of big sort of businessmen who are linked to Israel. Some would say they're sort of the rich Zionists in America. But I think that if as I believe, Epstein more than likely was connected to Mossad. She was too. And I think that she would have been used as the bait. My personal feeling, I think that she helped Epstein move in that kind of direction. In other words, where he wasn't just sort of the money guy, kind of crooked money guy. He was a money guy who could actually help Israel.
But her dad knew him.
Right.
I thought that was really strange.
The guy that used to work for Israeli intelligence with Robert Maxwell told me that he had seen Jeffrey Epstein in Maxwell's office in like the mid-'80s. So that definitely goes back several years.
Part of the business too? Was she involved in what you were doing over there?
No. Later on,
Yeah.
she got involved with Israeli intelligence together with him.
Right.
But not in the science and Iranian business.
Would you say she was an agent as well? Was she someone working for Israeli intelligence?
Oh, definitely.
Military intelligence as well?
Yes.
And when that happens, because I have no idea how that world works, so I'm learning a little
It
bit.
happened by accident.
Do you get orders and you have to do certain things, or is it more like
No, you get projects. Because what really happened, my take on it, and the later thing, is that these guys were seen as agents. And so they found a niche for themselves, blackmailing American and other political figures.
for the Israelis? So it's hard for people to understand why Israel would want to get blackmail on an American. I'm asking a question that I can answer it quite properly, but for most people it's hard for them to think about Israel as being blackmailing their leaders in the United States. It's a very...
It was quite a MO.
En dan de Mossad en Clinton. Begin 97 ontdekt de FBI dat de Mossad een spion heeft in het Witte Huis. Iemand op een hoge positie met de codenaam Mega. De FBI begint een klopjacht, maar moet daarmee stoppen. De Mossad chanteert het Witte Huis.